Can we talk about creator's block for a minute? At the beginning of the year, I decided that I was going to focus all of my content creation energy this year over here on YouTube. And I wanted to post fresh content every Friday. Now, I knew this was going to be challenging because, as you might have seen in a previous video, I have never stuck with a content strategy before. But over the last 10 months, through trial and error, I have developed a strategy that's working pretty well for me. So I thought maybe it would help you if content creator to content creator, I shared some of the things that are working for me so that maybe you can try them too. And once I settled into a strategy that was working for me, I developed it into a system that helps me to automate it. So make sure you stick around to the end where I'm going to tell you more about that. So there's a bunch of things that I've tried, and some have worked better than others. But today I want to talk about the two that I thought were going to be the best option that weren't really that great. And then I'm going to tell you about the three that have really, really been working for me. Okay, so as far as the ones that have not been working very well. So the first thing I tried that I really thought was going to be the ticket for me was inspiration, just my own personal inspiration. I thought that because when I was starting out, there were so many things, at least I thought, so many things that I wanted to teach you guys or talk about. And I thought that that would sustain me and that that would just continue to pop up for me every week when I needed to record something. And not surprisingly, I guess, looking back on it, that didn't last very long. And it started to get stressful. I got to a point actually where I thought I'm either going to start basically repeating myself or start talking about things that are completely off topic and not really the point of this channel. There were a couple of reasons why, looking back on it, I think that didn't go well. Number one, because I think expecting endless inspiration is naive at best. And number two, because when I first started out, you may look back at some of my older videos and realize, wow, there's like a lot. They're long, right? The first few months of videos were like super long. Like I was trying to keep them like around or under 20 minutes and I was struggling to do that. And I think a big part of that was because I was trying to put too much into one video. And that works great if I'm teaching a course or doing a group program or something like that. But for a YouTube video, it's really better, and I think this is true of kind of all social media, like small bites, right? People can binge through your content if they want to see the overall. So that was kind of the first problem that I found with, trying to count on inspiration, was that I was so inspired at the beginning that I just did way too much, way too fast. The second thing that I tried that I thought was going to be a little bit more effective than it was, and honestly, it was for a time, that time frame when I started to lose inspiration and I needed a plan, right? I thought that if I themed out the weeks, so I had it very like kind of pre-planned out in my mind as far as like how I was going to schedule things out. So like I was going to do this topic on the first week of the month and like this topic on the second, third, fourth, right? And that does work loosely, but I think it was too restrictive for me and also like felt obligatory. There were weeks where it was, in my schedule that I should be talking about whatever topic, Trello or whatever, and I just didn't feel inspired about Trello in that moment, which, don't get me wrong, I love Trello. I'm always inspired by Trello, but not necessarily in a content creation kind of way. So those two things didn't really work for me as well as I had thought or had hoped, right? I still use them to an extent. So when I feel inspired to talk about something, I'll do a video about that. Or if I'm feeling a little bit uninspired about everything, I will sometimes go back to that loose like monthly strategy. So they are still helpful and they were definitely stepping stones that I needed to get myself to where I'm at right now. So let me talk about, though, the top 3 things that are really surprisingly working well for me. So the first thing that's working really well for me is answering other people's specific questions about Trello and Notion and automation in general. And I think, I knew early on that that would be helpful, but I wasn't exactly sure where to get so many questions, right? Because there's only so many times you can ask your Facebook group or your clients or your friends or whatever, like, hey, what questions do you have for me now, and to make them something that's going to translate well into a video. So I wasn't sure where to go to get those questions. And then I joined some Reddit communities. And I've talked about Reddit here off and on as far as it being a good resource for me, learning Notion and things like that. I was surprised how useful it was for me in finding specific questions that people have about Trello. Whether they were asking me specifically or just asking the community, it was a great place for me to see the kinds of things that you guys are trying to figure out. The second thing that I would say is really helpful for me is kind of seeing what kind of content other people in this similar space are putting out there. Now, I don't love comparison in business. I think that it can be really, really dangerous. So I try to avoid comparison with close competitors, but I sometimes will go and find the people in this space, the Trello space, the business automation space, the Notion space, who have massive followings, and look at the topics that they're getting the most views on. Because I think that there's always a different way to explain and teach the same thing. So I will often take the topics that are doing really well for them and I'll put my spin on it. And the third thing that's been really, really working for me lately has surprisingly been AI. Now, I've done videos on AI before. In fact, last week we did a first look at some of the newest Canva AI tools that they just released, so you could check that out here. But I was surprised at, all these tools now, they come with like a brand voice, and they're such a great place to start. And I kind of knew that in some ways. I had played around with it before in earlier videos and stuff. And I was starting to see how it can be helpful to not be starting with a blank page. Like, for example, my weekly newsletter, which if you're not subscribed to yet, by the way, you can find the link to do that in the description. But I always start out the concept for my weekly newsletter with a quote about business, a quote about technology, or business technology is even better. And I found that going into ChatGPT or even Canva's Magic Write and just asking it to give me, 30 quotes about business technology, and then I can see which ones that come up speak to me. I could do the same thing searching on the internet, and I have in the past, but this is so much faster, right? So I love being able to use that tool in a way to just kind of spark that inspiration in a way that, is just not always naturally coming for me. So those are the three things that are working best for me, along with the two that are not as effective as I thought, but still come in handy from time to time. So I'm curious though, whether you are a YouTuber or a podcaster or an Instagrammer or a Facebooker, is that a word? I'm not sure. But I want to know, how are you getting past your creator's block? What strategies are you using? Let us know in the comments. The online tools for your business do not need to be complicated or overwhelming. It's time to let it be easy.